I am an animal, naked and free, one with the thundering herd. I am moonlight, night scent, primal hunger, primal rage. I am Kraven. This story revisits the events of Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 1, Issue 15, mostly from the perspective of Kraven the Hunter from Sensational Spider-Man Annual, Volume 1, 1996. Kraven's first hunt. Years ago, along the plains of Africa, Kraven the Hunter outruns a herd of gazelles on his way to his camp. There, Kraven struggles with his dual nature, one of contradictions between his heritage as a Russian nobleman and that of a savage hunter. Digging through his bag, Kraven goes over the letter sent to him by Dmitry Semerdakov, asking him to come to America. Going over the letter again, Kraven decides to take up the offer, thinking that the never-ending hunt is destined to take him out of the jungles of nature, concentrate jungles of man. Meanwhile, in New York City, an elderly man arrives at a jewelry shop just as the owner, Harold Jackson, is about to lock up for the night. The elderly man begs the shop owner to let him in to purchase a ring for his daughter's birthday. When the elderly man selects the most expensive ring and offers to pay cash, Harold lets him inside to pay for the item. That's when the elderly man, actually the chameleon in disguise, attacks. Assuming the identity of the shopkeeper, the chameleon beats Harold into submission and then robs the shop. As he walks back to his secret hideout, the chameleon thinks about how people cling so tightly to their identity. After doffing his Harold Jackson disguise, the chameleon thinks about the day when he can allow himself to become Dmitry Smeganov once more. Holding up mask of Kraven the Hunter and Spider-Man, he knows this is a luxury he cannot allow himself just yet. At that very moment, Spider-Man is swinging across the city, busting criminals and helping those in need, revealing in every moment until he realizes that he is due to get home. Rushing back to Queens, Spider-Man changes back into Peter Parker, feeling bad about how he will have to lie to his Aunt May about his double life, but he can't bring himself to tell her that he is Spider-Man because he isn't sure her fragile health will be able to handle knowing the truth. May is upset that Peter is late coming home because today is Uncle Ben's birthday. As Peter blames himself for the death of his Uncle Ben, he feels even worse for being late. Noticing how down her nephew is being on himself, May tells Peter that she understands that he is a very busy young man and says that he is being there at all is a blessing. For a brief moment, Peter considers telling his aunt the truth, but decides against it, telling May that she is the greatest instead. Later, Sergei Kravenov takes a cruise ship across the ocean to United States. He decides to spend the evening dancing with one of the other passengers. The woman swoons over Kraven's wealthy background, and the two soon go out to the deck to watch the ocean. When Sergei makes an advance that is unwanted, angering him, struggling with the woman, she claws him across the face and calls him an animal, enraging him even more. He goes back to the room alone. Kraven gazes across a room plastered with photos and articles of Spider-Man, tripling totally new and unleashing a swarm of spiders. Kraven begins crushing and eating the arachnids to prepare for the coming fight. While along the shores of New York City, the chameleon stands on a pier, changing shapes between Kraven and Spider-Man. He can sense that Kraven is coming and finds himself conflicted between his love and hatred for his friend. The next morning, Peter Parker joins the Daily Bugle publisher J. Jonah Jameson and his secretary Betty Brant to witness the arrival of Kraven the Hunter. Peter has been brought along to take photo of his famous hunter. When they arrive there, Peter runs into Liz Allen and Flash Thompson. Betty is instantly upset to see Liz Allen there, and Jameson scolds them for socializing on the job. That's when Kraven comes off the ship. Jonah tries to find out why he comes to America. That's when some of his wild animals break loose. Peter slips away to change into Spider-Man and catch the animals, but the wall caller arrives on the scene. Kraven has rounded up the animals up. Changing back into civilian identity, Peter is then scolded by Jameson for not getting photos of Kraven in action. Once again, Jameson asks Kraven why he has come to America. This time the man explains that he has come to hunt Spider-Man. As Kraven leaves, he stops, senses Spider-Man, and for a moment almost identifies him as Peter Parker, but dismisses the idea as ridiculous and leaves. Noticing that he attracted Kraven's attention briefly makes Spider-Man paranoid, but he is relieved when the wild man takes off. Later, Kraven meets the chameleon, and the pair begin to plan the coming hunt for Spider-Man. As Kraven begins to drink a glass of his jungle brew, the chameleon begs to drink some as well. Kraven mocks his ally, calling him by his real name. However, Dimitri insists that he is only the chameleon. Kraven pulls off the chameleon's mask to see his withered elderly face and begs to differ. He then relents, giving the chameleon the beverage. Drinking it, the chameleon vitality is restored and recovers his mask. Kraven reminds the chameleon of his position in this partnership, recalling how, as a boy, Dimitri was his slave. Later, Kraven tracks down the wall crawler, finding the masked hero as he is rounding up a gang of crooks. As Spider-Man leaves, his spider senses begin to go off as Kraven ambushes him. Although he has the element of surprise, Spider-Man managed to land one good blow. Disoriented by the strike, Kraven sees the wall crawler as a massive spider creature and begins to panic. Taking one of the drug-tipped tusks from his belt, Kraven manages to cut the wall crawler with it and retreats. Cowering in the alley, Kraven begins to fear Spider-Man. He begins to become delusional, thinking that the hero was responsible for the fall of Russia and the humiliation of his family, which led to his mother committing suicide. Finding Kraven, the chameleon knows exactly what his ally is thinking of and openly mocks him for being weak. Angered, the hunter strikes the chameleon, telling him not to speak of his mother again. Being struck by the Kraven triggers the chameleon years of abuse and begs surgery to stop hitting him. Kraven helps Dimitri up and vows that he will succeed and destroy Spider-Man. Meanwhile, Peter Parker has returned home where Kraven's drugs are still running through his system, leaving him greatly disoriented. Going downstairs for a moment, his Aunt May asks if he's okay. Peter tells her that he is fine and goes back to his room. Even though he can't get his arms to stop shaking, Peter decides to go back out as Spider-Man to continue searching for Kraven the Hunter. Peter eventually finds who he thinks is Kraven and follows the villain to Central Park. He is unaware that it's actually the chameleon disguised as Kraven in order to act as a decoy. Distracted by the chameleon's drum beating, Kraven manages to toss a net on the wall crawler. As the hero struggles to get free, Kraven clamps on the magnetic shackles of the web slinger's arms and legs. Fleeing, Spider-Man manages to duel the magnetic attraction between the two shackles by covering them with webbing. Finding who he thinks if the Kraven the Hunter, quickly unmasks him and discovers that it is the chameleon, who surrenders instantly. Spider-Man then leaves the chameleon webbed up while he continues his search for the real Kraven. When Spider-Man begins stalking Kraven, the master hunted begins to panic and is ultimately webbed up by the wall crawler. Spider-Man isn't interested in playing Kraven's games, and after removing the shackles from his arms and legs, he leaves Kraven. The hunter begs for Spider-Man to come back and kill him, but either the web spinner didn't hear him or ignored his request. Several days later, after being arrested, Kraven the Hunter is eventually deported from the United States. He wakes up after a nightmare about spiders. In the other room, he hears Dimitri crying out for his mask, which has been removed from his face. Looking under his bed, Kraven finds the chameleon's mask and gazes deeply into his eyeless face. At the same moment, Peter Parker is looking into Spider-Man mask, thinking about how glad he is to be alive after his encounter with the Kraven the Hunter. When Aunt May comes into the room, Peter quickly hides his mask before she can see it. She asks Peter that she and Ann Watson are going out for dinner and invites Peter to join them. The young man takes May up on her offer, asking his aunt if he had said that he loved her recently. Notes: Kraven's First Hunt. This story revisits the events of Amazing Spider-Man 15, mostly from the perspective of Kraven the Hunter. Per the sliding timescale of Earth 616, the story happens 9 years prior to Spider-Man stories published in 1996. At the time of the story, Peter's Uncle Ben had recently been murdered by a burglar as seen in Amazing Spider-Man 15. Peter blames himself because as Spider-Man, he could have stopped the thief for a few days earlier. At the time of the story, Peter was dating Betty Brant since Amazing Spider-Man 7. Liz Allen started becoming interested in Peter Parker in Amazing Spider-Man 12, making Betty jealous whenever they crossed paths. Next issue, Sensational Spider-Man, Volume 1, Issue 11, Deadly Diversions.